We had had contact with him in the past. We did not have any reason to arrest him. He was a known subject. He is the subject of other police reports.
It was a major question in need of an answer yesterday when we learned the identity of the shooter in Monday's mass shooting at the Boise Town Square Mall. What was known about the 27-year-old suspect and when it was known? As you heard Boise Police Chief Ryan Lee say, they had contact with him in the past. We did not have any reason to arrest him, he said, and he was the subject of other police reports. Today, we learned what other police reports means. There was a report filed on April 2nd of this year by an Idaho State Police officer who happened upon a Jacob James Bergquist at the Idaho State House. The name, the description, the birth date, they all match the same suspect in the mall shooting. That day in April, the trooper noted, Bergquist was armed with a semi-automatic handgun. The trooper also said Bergquist volunteered. He was a felon with a conviction out of Illinois, but because of Idaho law, Bergquist said he was allowed to have and carry a gun. Joe Paris tells the rest of the story.
On the afternoon of April 2nd of this year, an Idaho State Police trooper reported seeing Jacob Bergquist recording a video inside the state capitol. He noted in an ISP report that Bergquist was armed with a holstered semi-automatic handgun on his left hip. The trooper writes that as he was watching Bergquist, he was approached by an elderly lady who asked where the governor's office was. The trooper says he pointed her in the right direction, then noticed that Bergquist heard what he had said to the woman. He says that Bergquist then picked up his camera and a black backpack-type bag and headed in the same direction towards the governor's office. The trooper says that he followed the woman and Bergquist and saw both go into the governor's office. The trooper went through a staff door to access the governor's office and eventually watched as Bergquist spoke with the governor's receptionist. The trooper writes in his report, quote, "I listened while the young man explained that he wanted to interview the governor to get his thoughts on persons convicted of felonies being able to carry guns. He went on to say that he was a felon and that by Idaho Code 18-310, he was able to carry a firearm and that he was trying to get the word out to others that they too could carry in Idaho." That's when the trooper learned his name was Jacob Bergquist, when the receptionist asked him for it. Bergquist went on to say that he was convicted of theft in Illinois. Before he left, the trooper says he asked Bergquist why he was armed if he was a felon. Bergquist told the trooper that by Idaho Code 18-310, he could, and that the trooper should check it out. The trooper says he had the ISP Regional Communications Center run a records check on Bergquist through Idaho and Illinois. The search found records in Illinois, but nothing in Idaho. That search also produced a photo of Bergquist, which the trooper confirmed was him. The trooper also notes that the governor's receptionist had gotten Bergquist's YouTube site, Guns and Rodents. The receptionist sent the trooper 2 videos that Bergquist posted about his visit to the Idaho State Capitol. The trooper writes, the videos clearly show him in the Capitol and armed. The report finishes with this note from the trooper, quote, "Based on the above information, I respectfully request that the Ada County Prosecutor's Office investigate potential charges against Bergquist for violation of Idaho Code 18-3316 and Idaho Code 18-310, Section 4.
Okay, so Joe, this is that report from last April by that ISP trooper. What did Ada County Prosecutor have to say about what he requested?
Right. Actually, the Ada County Prosecutor's Office, we reached out to them today. We had some questions, and they sent us a statement. And the Ada County Prosecutor's Office is the statement you're looking at. Now, they tell us that they did receive reports about Jacob Bergquist from Idaho State Police and Boise Police in the spring of 2021, so this past spring. Those reports to the Prosecutor's Office brought into question whether Bergquist was prohibited from possessing a firearm. Long story short, based on Idaho law, Bergquist was not prohibited from possessing a firearm in Idaho. The question is, why? Well, we learned from the prosecutor's office today that in state code, there are a list of felony convictions that disqualify someone from possessing a firearm.
Now, before you get there, this Idaho Code 18-3316 says, because of Idaho code or a comparable felony crime in another state, territory, commonwealth, which would mean they couldn't own a gun in Idaho, but that's where the distinction lies.
Right. So the prosecutor's office tells us that Mr. Bergquist did not have a felony conviction for a listed offense in Idaho statute. There's a whole list in there that really it says if you did one of these things, if you were convicted of one of these felonies, you cannot possess a gun. Now, they say that Bergquist was prosecuted for a qualifying offense in another state, but that case did not result in a qualifying felony conviction, telling us that their final conclusion, our office could not take any action.
And because theft is not on this list in Idaho, that's where the problem is, that there was no way that they could force any conviction of a quote-unquote felon carrying a gun in Idaho who shouldn't be.
Right, so there's not an exact equivalent between the state of Illinois and the state of Idaho in terms of the felony laws on the books. So sometimes in between states, you're going to get some gray areas and some questions, and that's one that we have right now. Again, Bergquist was convicted of a felony in the state of Illinois, felony theft, and felony theft is just not something that's on the books in Idaho the same way as in Illinois. You may be able to read the description of the crime and say, okay, well, I understand what this action is. It may be the same.
Sure.
But in the letter of the law, you have to be very specific, and there can't be gray area.
Right, and so that's kind of what we've seen in the history of about the last year or so in regards to Jacob Bergquist. And because the criminal background, Joe, not the only thing that we learned about the shooter. For example, he was fond of his gun, we learned, and rarely was separated from it. We learned from the owner of Q's, which is a pool hall on Fairview, that Jacob Bergquist was employed there for 1 day as a doorman. She said she let him go because, well, he refused to remove his gun while on duty. She said she just needed him to check IDs at the door and the gun wasn't necessary. Chief Lee saying he was a known subject, came in other forms as well. We learned he frequently went to a gym on State Street, about 2 to 3 times a week, according to one member. We learned from 2 separate members the shooter would consistently wear a gun on his hip while in the gym, setting it down maybe, setting it aside in between exercises. It was enough to cause concern for one of those members who told us after seeing the gun-wearing gym goer, he called Boise police on September 20th to complain. He told us he was told wearing a gun in a gym isn't a crime in Idaho. And it isn't. I mean, after all, Idaho is an open carry state. So it's not unusual to see gun owners wearing them, well, almost anywhere. This gym member told us Bergquist would also usually wear a t-shirt advertising his YouTube channel. The same YouTube channel, Guns and Rodents, that Joe just mentioned and was mentioned in the ISP report from April. Well, curiosity caused another member looking at that shirt, caused him to look it up. And on it, he says he found videos about guns and squirrels, but also racist rants that were posted there. Enough for this person, we were told, he told us, a person of color, by the way, to be worried about his safety, he said. So he would avoid the gym whenever he saw Bergquist was there. That channel was subsequently removed by YouTube, but apparently Bergquist started another YouTube channel and again made it clear he is a gun-owning felon living in Boise, Idaho. He even uploaded video of himself shooting right here at a local indoor gun range. That YouTube channel has also, since yesterday, been removed. Those are the things we did learn today about the shooter, but there's still a lot more we don't know. Pertains to who knew what and when. A man walking around with a gun in Idaho isn't criminal behavior. And of course, hindsight is always 20/20, so that when you start lining up these things, these reports, these issues that people bring forward, you can kind of see the path and where it's headed, right? Issues were raised with this guy, but those issues didn't break any Idaho laws. However, there's still the question of how a guy goes from walking around with a gun to a guy walking into a mall to do some serious harm. Questions we still haven't had answered. Were there other potential red flags out there? More substantial concerns raised with Boise police in recent weeks. Was there a specific shooting threat made by the suspect about the Boise Town Square Mall? When we get those answers, we'll get them to you. Now, we normally don't want to give this much attention to a perpetrator of such a heinous crime. But these underlying unresolved questions, well, they kind of warrant a more in-depth look. So that's what we're doing right now, and we'll continue to do so. We would normally, as they say, look for the helpers.